group for quite some time. And I don't know, did I meet you guys at the Billie Eilish concert? Is that where I met you? Anybody know? Anyway, so I've really been looking forward to it, and I'm very grateful for this group. And it feels really good to be in the presence of other women who share this passion for healing the earth and, getting our hands dirty and making good, meaningful change. All right, I see some familiar faces here, so good to see everyone. So, I could get on here and talk a lot about data and share a lot of studies that we've done in our experiments, both in land and in product. But I wanted to talk more like friends and share some of the stories of our journey that started back in 2018. This has been the hardest thing I've ever done. And there are about 1 million different reasons why it has been hard to both innovate in tampons and to innovate in agriculture, to implement new methods that contribute to the healing of Earth. So here's our storytelling. These are my two partners, Dr. Megan Glasky and Olaf Iselay. Dr. Meg is from here, just like me, and she is a board certified pediatrician and a Reiki practitioner. And she is the one that makes everything look beautiful and the one that takes my jumbled up CEO brain words and turns them into something digestible and beautiful. And then Olaf is our head of strategic product development. He is an engineer who has worked in the absorbent hygiene space for 25 years. And he handles our supply chain coordination as well. All right, next slide, please. Let me make sure I can advance on mine. Okay, cool. All right, so a lot of times people ask, okay, where in the world did you get this crazy idea for a hemp tampon? And this story starts way back when I was 18. So when I was 18 years old, I got pregnant with my first daughter, Bella. And that was an interesting experience. And I found myself asking, how in the world did I end up here? And realized that I really didn't have a lot of information that I needed to understand my own body, to understand the medications that I was taking, and to use that to make good informed choices. And at the same time, I received a lot of negative feedback and negative reactions when I announced my pregnancy. And so those two things combined motivated me to pursue my master's in nursing and women's health, to become a women's health nurse practitioner and take care of patients and women in ways that they knew that they always had somebody in their corner and that they always had every piece of information they needed to understand their bodies and make good informed choices. So that's what started this whole shindig. And then I got older and I had a couple of more babies. Now I have 3 daughters, and really started looking at the products and my environment and how that affects our health. At this time, there was a lot of information coming forward about epigenetics, which is how the environment actually changes and triggers DNA expression that can come out as chronic illnesses and contributes to generational inheritable illnesses as well. So, I was kind of auditing my house and, throwing away the plastic tubs and replacing them with glass containers, switching to, reusable towels instead of using so many paper towels, or disinfecting wipes, cleaning up my bathroom, my beauty products, things that go on and inside my body. And this was really, really hard. So I don't know if you guys are like me, but I like to do a lot of research and find the information I need about the products that I use. And it took a lot of energy, and it was a lot of mental load as a busy working mom. And it set off this light bulb in my head because I had the same experience as a clinician taking care of women who were having issues with their products. And it was like flying blind as a clinician. I didn't know the ingredients. There was no access to that. And so it was just to test it out and see if it works. So, that informed what I do today. I'll share why here in a moment. And then, of course, the thing that really unites us all here today is I wanted products that were good for the environment, but that also didn't require me to work harder. I was really tired of just being the one responsible for recycling, for, doing all of this mental work. And I had a breaking point really when I was on my period, which breaking points happen a lot on my period. But I was using a tampon and was using a plastic applicator, and I threw it in the trash. And I was like, man, God, why do I have to keep worrying about this? Why do I have to keep feeling guilty about this? Why is it up to us as women to carry this load in the household just for us to have a world that our children can thrive in when we're dead and gone? So all of those things came together to form Trace. So in 2018, I decided to go make a tampon that was better for us. And at the same time, I kind of accidentally learned about hemp fiber. And this is a fun story from a random person at a music festival who is now a colleague, but they had a booth for the Tennessee Hemp Industries Association and were teaching people about hemp. So my science brain, I came home, started doing research and learned about hemp fiber and learned that it can be as absorbent and sometimes more absorbent than cotton. It can be as soft as cotton, but it can be grown in ways without requiring pesticides, without requiring herbicides, without irrigation. And just growing the plant itself, just the plant being alive, helps heal soils by aerating the soils, supporting that soil ecosystem, improving soil water carrying capacity. And at the same time, it can be as efficient, and in some studies, more efficient at carbon sequestration, atmospheric carbon sequestration than trees. Yet it's rapidly renewable and can go from planting to harvest in as little as 41 days is the shortest that I've seen. So that was a eureka moment. I thought, you know what, this would make a really great tampon. I'm going to go do that. So started that journey only to realize, there was no hemp fiber in the world that was the quality that we needed to make a tampon outside of China. And I knew I didn't want to source from China because a core part of why I was doing this is to give every single piece of information to myself and to other women about what goes in their product and how it got there. And that was pretty much impossible from China. So since there was no supply chain, I said, okay, well, I'm going to put on my boots and I'm going to go do that, having no clue what I was getting myself into. All right, next slide. All right.
I was thinking about leaving the backpack in the car. I'm glad I didn't.
So I started what I call now my preamble company called Southeast Hemp Fiber in 2018 to develop hemp fiber processing technology, to develop new markets for hemp fiber in the US for this category of tampons called absorbent hygiene and non-wovens, and to just learn how to do it. So I wanted to walk you guys through the supply chain steps from farm to finished good. And I'm sorry about kind of the animations here, but so the first step is a bag of seed. So it starts with seed genetics, choosing the proper seed genetics and acquiring that seed. Then the second step is actually growing the hemp fiber. The third is mechanically processing it. The fourth is chemically processing it, which is removing some of the components that we don't need, and I'll share more about that here in a second. The fourth is a further mechanical refinement of the fiber. The fifth is a sterilization of the fiber. And then the last is turning it into an actual tampon. So there are several different steps involved, and no one knew how to do any of it except for the two steps circled here. The first manufacturing step that had any inkling of knowledge is the chemical refinement. And the story behind this is that there was one person in the United States that knew how to do this, and his name is Guy Carpenter, and he's in the picture on the bottom left. And I had a buddy from college who was a textiler. So when I started this journey, I called him up randomly and said, hey, this is what I think I want to do. Is there a market for hemp fiber? What have you learned? And he did two things for me. He invited me to a conference, a textile networking conference that was in Nashville the next day. And so I said, yes, I'll go. Hung up the phone, immediately called the printers and said, I need business cards. I don't know what my business name is. I don't know, just call it Southeast Hemp Fiber. And the next day found myself standing up in front of a big old room full of textile supply chain operators, proclaiming to be a company that will bring textile grade hemp fiber to their hands. And, that day changed my life. I met a woman who does a lot of development for the Department of Defense. She left a business card at my spot and said, give me a call. I flew up to see her 2 weeks later, and it was the first time I ever saw hemp fiber. It's from her. So it was kind of ballsy. I really had no clue what I was doing, but was very driven and saw an opportunity and saw the need to network with other people to make it happen. The other thing that my textiler friend did was introduce me to Guy. And I called him one day, and I'll never forget this day. And, again, naively told him how I was going to go save the world with hemp fiber and asked him straight out to be my mentor. And by some dumb luck, he agreed, and he has taught me just about everything I know about hemp fiber. And we are very close business partners and now friends. The middle photo are two of our farming partners. So the man in the center, his name is Rick Brown. We source a lot of hemp fiber from him, and he is our primary growing partner in North Carolina. And the gentleman to his left is David Canby, and he is our preferred fiber processing partner. He is also in North Carolina. And then the last picture is a bonus picture. That's me and a man named Eric Henry, and he owns TS Designs out of North Carolina. And they make seed to shirt t-shirts and do a lot of natural fabric dyeing as well. And he is in this hemp fiber collective in the US trying to make this happen. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so all of us in the United States trying to figure out this hemp fiber situation, none of us knew what we were doing, like I said, and we had to learn literally everything from the ground up. So that included researching seed genetics, finding out where can we get seed and how do we get it into the country and into our hands. How do we prep the soil so this fiber can grow in the way that it's meant to? Do we need to fertilize the soil? Do we need pesticides or weed suppressants? How do we plant it? How do we cultivate it? How do we harvest it? When do we harvest it and why? How do we store it and move it? All of these things were unknowns in 2018, and it's what I have been working on ever since. And I'm very grateful for that time because it gave me a deep appreciation for the hard work that growers do and to never take them for granted and to compensate them as such. And so at Trace, we have a firm belief that everything starts with the farmer, and all of our pricing, costing, price point, margin is all hinging on what the farmer needs first. And that is very radical in our industry. And usually what happens is, and this is what happens in cotton, is that you as the consumer decide how much you're going to pay for something. And then that trickles down through the whole supply chain. And you saw how many steps there are. And the person that gets what's ever left over is the farmer. And that is creating a situation where it is really difficult to ask growers to implement new, healthier methods for the earth in their farming programs. It's a big risk. If you have 20 acres that can grow a high yield crop, and what your margins are going to be, and you can make payroll with that, and then you have some random girl coming up to you asking you to grow 5 of those acres for fiber hemp that has no market yet, and we don't know if we can pay you for it, but this is the future, you can understand the challenge there. So in the beginning of US hemp fiber development, the farmers that were growing it were very revolutionary and very entrepreneurial in spirit and made a lot of sacrifices to make this happen. So the story I'll share on these two slides is on the left is a field of little baby fiber hemp in North Carolina. And this is a field that Trace commissioned. We paid $7,000 of seed to get that done. And because of all of the difficulties of being a new crop, our seed came late. And so it got planted late and this whole field was ruined. So that is a great example of some of the barriers that the hemp fiber industry has dealt with over time, and the financial challenges that we encounter as we're trying to research and develop and get to market. The second picture is literally 2 boxes of hemp fiber stalks, boxes of sticks. That when I was starting and learning, okay, well, once we get it out of the field, then how do we turn it into fiber? At the time, there was only 2 companies in the United States who had any capacity to do that. And one of them was in Colorado. So I drove around Tennessee and collected a bunch of hemp stalks that had been grown the past few years and literally shipped them to Colorado. Flew out there, met my box of sticks at the processor and watched them do it to verify and validate what equipment was going to be appropriate. Lo and behold, the equipment broke while I was there. It didn't work. So flew back home, having learned a lot there. And thankfully, that company has made a lot of progress and is now producing great fiber. The next picture is a test plot that I grew at our farm here in Middle Tennessee. And that year was 2019. And that was in our little humble test plot that I planted with my 4-wheeler, was the highest quality hemp fiber grown in the United States that year. Very proud of that. And then the last 2 photos are a demonstration of where the hemp fiber comes from. And the fiber that we use in our tampons and that are used in textiles comes from the outer part of the stalk. That's called bast. It's peeled away. Now, the beauty of hemp is that the whole plant can be utilized, and that inner bark that's left over has about a gajillion uses, and some of those are already on market today. That can be used in construction applications, bioplastics, paper, a lot of different applications. But for us and for textiles, the primary part that we use is the fiber. And there are some new technologies coming forward that we can use that bark and turn it into fiber, kind of like how tree bark is used right now to make certain apparel and non-woven fibers, which I'll share with you here in a second about that. And then the last photo is a bale of hemp. Looks like a bale of straw. This one came from North Carolina, and I visited a farmer who was learning the process of how to bale this. And it's a different ballgame than baling straw. So all that to say, there was a huge body of information that had to be learned. And it took Trace 5 years to get to a finished tampon that works. All right, next slide. Okay, so huge barriers for Trace in the hemp industry at large are regulatory and financial hurdles. Now, at this time in 2018, 2019, 2020, the government was kind of freaking out, didn't know what to do. Every single state had its own hemp fiber agronomy program that was administered through separate departments of ag. The USDA didn't know what to make of it, and they were scrambling to figure it out. So it was very fragmented, and that created a lot of issues in research and development because in some cases we couldn't move product across state lines. There were issues importing things and getting stuck in customs. People were getting arrested on the side of the road for transporting fiber because law enforcement didn't know what it was, and I couldn't get a bank account. I went to the bank to open just a deposit checking account for Southeast Hemp Fiber so I could do business. And so I could accept payment as a consultant for textile and apparel brands. and I just couldn't. So I had to pull a favor from a friend I went to high school with who was a banker to get an account open for that. I also couldn't get commercial liability insurance at that time. Underwriters just wouldn't cover anything that had the word hemp in it. And so I was operating without commercial liability insurance for almost 3 years. And then, of course, financial. This one's huge. And this is part of building something new that's never been done before. And investors really need to rely on price indicators, market data that's already been happening to prove that what you're trying to do is going to make money. At this time, and barely today, there was no market data. We were creating the market. And yet the equipment and the manufacturing infrastructure to get a product made from hemp fiber and therefore support the growing of hemp fiber, it's in the $10 to $20 million range. So this was a non-starter for most investors, and all of us that were in the hemp world at that time, there was a lot of bootstrapping and putting our own personal money in the pot. And this picture is Andrew. He is on our board. He's been a great financial mentor to me. But he comes from the world of polyester manufacturing and the Cook brothers. And we have converted him to the lovely hemp side of life. And he is an earth lover and understands the amazing power and potential in the future of hemp fiber as it pertains to the environment and consumer. All right, next slide. Okay, so like I said, we had to do a lot of innovation from the ground up, but also in learning how the heck can we manufacture both the fiber and the tampon great, in a way that works, in a way that's streamlined. So that way farmers have a place to sell their fiber, and that way we as a company can make product to sell to give to you. So like I said, there are a few different steps for extracting that fiber. The first is mechanical, second is a chemical purification, and the third is a refinement. So the mechanical, let me back up. All of these pictures on these slides, the top picture are photos from our hemp fiber processing supply chain operations. And the bottom photos are from our cotton fiber processing supply chain. So I wanted you guys to see the similarities, that it's really in essence the same. So I always found that pretty interesting, and it's something that we've taught the FDA quite a bit about. So in that mechanical process, our challenge is to both remove the fiber from the inner bark. And what holds those two things together are called lignin and pectin. Those are really sticky compounds that are present in most plants. But it sticks all the fiber together, and we have to remove that in order to get a nice clean fiber that looks like cotton that works for a tampon. So that's accomplished in a couple of different ways. The first is by retting, which is letting the hemp straw lay in the field after it's been cut down and allowing the soil microbes and the dew that happens at night with condensation from the air to naturally start the decomposition process and remove some of those lignin and pectins. And then the mechanical process called decortication will help remove that fiber as well. Now, this is a huge challenge, and there are about 15 different methods of decortication and types of equipment. So one of the accomplishments that we have had is figuring out the right type of equipment in the right order with the right configuration that gets the right type of fiber grown the right way into the right kind of fiber that we need that is suitable for a tampon. So that is a summary of the huge barriers that it takes to get hemp into a consumer good. The chemical purification is very interesting. So again, we need to remove any lignin or pectin in the fiber. And this also helps control for any potential cannabinoids that have been, that are residues from any, remaining floral material that could have grown on the hemp fiber. So this is really critical for us as a tampon manufacturer, because our tampon does not contain any cannabinoids and we don't want it to yet. So it's important for us that we, developed a standard protocol that had a really strong quality control program to produce high quality fibers that work consistently, but also fibers that were safe for anybody to use. And right now in the United States, there is 0 hemp fiber chemical purification facility in the whole US. Everything right now is outsourced and jobbed out, which is very difficult. And this is something that Trace is tackling directly. And I'm very proud to say that Trace is the first consumer company who has been able to accomplish textile grade, hygiene grade hemp fiber in a 100% US grown and processed supply chain. So we're very fortunate to have access to that chemical purification. And we have a provisional patent on our process. So that's exciting. And then the third is refinement, and that is basically combing out the fiber with a fine tooth comb. So audio visual stuff, visual aid. When we first decorticate the fiber, it kind of looks like this. It's what we think about when we think about hemp from the early 90s, kind of rough. And then as it gets cleaned in that process, it becomes more refined and you see some of the artifact out of it. And then it goes through our chemical process to remove that lignin and pectin, and it just naturally lifts the color. And then after the final step of refining and blending, it looks like this. And this is the final fiber that turns into a tampon. So, okay, next slide. Okay, so fun fact, tampons have literally been the same since the 1970s. That was the last materials innovation that we've seen when organic cotton was introduced into tampons for the first time. That is insane to me. Think about the other technological improvements that have been made over time, but not in tampons, and why. Part of that reason is because of the supply chain issues. And part of that reason is because there's been very little motivation from the tampon industry to change, because we as menstruators have to use tampons and pads. So we're perpetually consuming them, buying them. There's very little market demand to pull it through. It's going to take us as consumers making the decision to change it and telling the manufacturers that it needs to be changed. So that's what we're working on here at Trace. So with part of this, we have to decide, how do we want to design our tampons and what ingredients are important for us to go in them, what ingredients are not important and not needed, and what ingredients could actually harm us as humans and harm the environment. And really the only way to know that is to have a combination of trained medical knowledge, trained environmental knowledge, and trained supply chain and production knowledge. There is no other brand in the world that we've met yet that has the combination of all three of those in the same space at the same time. So we are taking our areas of expertise and applying those to a tampon design, and really being extremely selective with ingredients and only using what is actually needed for you. And nothing more than what is necessary. So that is something I'm passionate about. Most tampons are made with viscose rayon, which is wood pulp, so trees that are chopped up and put into a chemical melting situation and turned into a liquor that is then extracted into a continuous fiber. Almost every single piece of clothing that feels soft is made from viscose rayon. Some are made from conventional cotton and some are made from organic cotton. What people often don't know is that most tampons also have something called a veil, which is like a very, very thin, almost invisible wrap around the absorbent pledget, the part that goes inside of you. And most of those are made with polypropylene. That is a petroleum-derived plastic. And up until, I guess, the past year and a half, that was not disclosed to people, even though that was the part that was touching body first. And some companies do use an organic cotton veil, but it doesn't work very well because cotton organic veils are thicker than the plastic one. So it hurts the absorbency. So our task at Trace was to accomplish a tampon that works well, that is comfortable, that is safe without that veil. And so to do that, we had to create the most high quality, longest fibers that had ever been used in tampons today to create that matrix that gave our tampon really good stability without needing to, wrap a piece of tape around it. And I'm proud to say that that has happened, that we are, surpassing our competitors in function. But we are also scoring the highest that we've seen in our fiber shedding safety test. So that's something really exciting for us. And we hope to do more research and can say that putting hemp fiber, putting our cotton in this tampon actually creates a safer tampon. Now we are launching applicator free. Right now, the only options for us as a brand are a cardboard applicator that we would not be able to use our tampon design in because of manufacturing limitations, or a bioplastic applicator that basically mixes a certain percentage of plant-derived plastics in with a virgin plastic, which is great. It reduces the amount of virgin plastic, but it still is not biodegradable in the end of life. And at Trace, our ethos is that harming less is not the same thing as helping. So we only want to choose those materials that give back to the earth and to us more than what they take. So we had to make the bold choice to launch with an applicator-free tampon. And we will likely launch our applicator tampon later this year because we've had some good advancements in product development. Okay, next slide. Okay. So again, in bringing our clinical knowledge to the table and our connection with how these products are made, I cannot stress enough how lacking the presence of human health consideration there is in the world of absorbent hygiene. This photo on the right is our little tiny but mighty team at Hygienics, which is the premier absorbent hygiene conference in North America that happens every year. We are members. Olaf is on the board. And 2 years ago, two of us were selected to be featured speakers about hemp and absorbent hygiene. And we, I've been going to this conference and to this organization's event since 2018. And to date, we are still the only clinicians that ever show up. So we see this as a huge need and are proud to be bringing this voice to the industry. And at this conference, there was, every year they do a talk from the regulatory affairs lead that, our membership fees pay for lobbying efforts. And they were actively lobbying against ingredient transparency laws that were being proposed that have now been passed in New York and California. And my esteemed partner, Olaf, in his talk got up and bravely faced his, decades-long colleagues and told them they were wrong. And that, we really have to place human health and environmental health as priorities over business interests in protecting IP. So I'm really proud of him for that. And we are not the most popular people in our industry because we have a commitment to transparency and telling people what's in products and telling people how they're made and where they're made. So the picture on the left is from a textile conference that I went to back in 2019 that talked about PFAS chemicals, pre-fluorinated chemicals that are forever chemicals that are used in textile finishes to make them water resistant. And these are still used in some menstrual underwears. So this is a hidden truth that is not great. That is a problem that we're also trying to solve. All right, next slide. Okay, we'll take a minute to talk about cotton. With all of our design decision-making based on the fiber capabilities and the needs of us as menstruators, we knew that we had to blend our fiber with some cotton. And we also have limited supply of hemp fiber. So both of those things factored into those choices. And our product is 20% hemp fiber, 80% cotton. But we knew that we wanted a cotton that matched our value set, that could perform from a value standpoint in the same way as our hemp. And that was really difficult to find. I didn't know that supply chain traceability in cotton is not a thing. I didn't know that regenerative cotton at the time was not a thing, and I was very confused about it. So by kind of dumb luck, we got invited to a very critical partnership that I'll share here in a moment. But let's go to the next slide. So, here we are, like, we've built this hemp fiber supply chain from the ground up that's fully traceable. We have all these tight relationships. We literally know the names of our farmers' children. We know about their family. We are on farm ourselves. We are making decisions with farmer on what happens on farm. So this very intimate relationship with all of our supply chain partners, where we have direct communication and reciprocal communication and care. So I did not think that that was weird until we got into the world of cotton. And part of the reason why, as menstruators and as clinicians, we don't have the information that we need right now is because of this picture. This is a picture of what the cotton fiber for tampon supply chain looks like. It is insanely complex. It is insanely obscure. And there's almost no way to verify exactly where a cotton lot comes from, if it's truly organic, and who grew it and how. So we actually had to abandon our original manufacturer because in the 9th hour, after 2 years of development, they decided that they were not willing to use our cotton from our supply chain because of politics in their supply chain. And so we said, okay, we'll be patient. We'll play this game. Tell us where your cotton comes from. We need to visit the farms. And they didn't know. 6 weeks later, they came back and said, okay, well, we finally found out, and it comes from Kyrgyzstan. Well, my esteemed colleagues in organic cotton sourcing around the world said, you cannot source from Kyrgyzstan. They use child labor there. So we left that, and that cost us around $200,000 and over a year of delay on getting to market. But we just couldn't in good conscience move forward with that. But we are proud to say that that manufacturer is now conducting their very first ever social audit. And this is a global manufacturer that makes a lot of lifestyle brands on the shelf in the US today. All right, let's go forward. All right. So at Trace, from the product and people side, the people that are using these products, this is core. We deserve to know exactly what goes in our vagina and how it got there. And the answer better be good, y'all. And if it's not good, we have to fix it. And this is the only way with this supply chain traceability and transparency that can happen. And the only way that we can achieve the level of information and the level of co-working to make this happen is with direct relationships that honor farmers first, and by giving them confidence that we are developing a strong market so they can financially make the transition to regenerative crops and regenerative practices. All right, let's go forward. All right, a quick note about our cotton project. We are founding members in the California Cotton and Climate Coalition. That is a hyperlink, but I'll put it in the chat here in a minute. We are a coalition of brands. Trace is the smallest brand of everyone, and we are the only non-apparel or non-textile brand. And what we're doing is we're pooling our money to support program management and to support R&D. For California cotton farm transition to regenerative practices. So again, basically subsidizing this process for farmer and working alongside farmer to test different interventions that work for them, but that also translate to the needs of our final project. For example, this picture in the middle with the man in the hat talking to Olaf next to a cotton gin, that's Tony. He is one of our cotton farmers. And on the bottom left is a picture of Cannon Bowles, and he is another one of our cotton farmers. This past season, we were contracted to buy our cotton from Cannon, but he sprayed glyphosate on the cotton, and we understand why, but we couldn't source from that anymore. And because of this tight-knit group, because we know exactly what happens on farm, we were then able to transfer to Tony's farm that has had no glyphosate input for our product. So that's the kind of relationship that's missing in consumer products today, and the kind of relationships that farmers need to make sure that they're growing something that will actually go to market. The picture on the top left is some of our brand partners in our roundtable where we're problem solving and kind of debriefing from the last year and figuring out what we can do better. And again, we're the smallest brand and we buy the most cotton. We are sitting at the table with a brand that is valued at $164 billion, and we pay the same dues as they do. So we really strongly believe in how cotton can be better. Cotton can help heal soil in the same way that hemp does. The last photo where I'm like totally geeking out is at our cotton purification center, where we got our first C4 cotton landed, and that took 2 years. So I was like geeking out and really happy. All right, next slide. All right, so all of that work to say, y'all, we did it. Man, we did it. We have finally made a tampon that works, and that is 100% US grown and processed hemp fiber and climate beneficial verified cotton that is fully traceable and transparent, and we will launch hopefully for sales in the beginning of June, late May. All right, next slide. All right, so to revisit regulatory and financial barriers, this is ongoing. Trace, we did lose our commercial liability insurance last year, but we are now covered by a different company. And we are regulated by FDA. So we're in close conversation with them. We've got another meeting here in the next 30 to 60 days. And we've really built a framework for them to evaluate hemp fiber and medical textiles across the board. So that's been a really fun collaborative place where we get to teach them. So that's exciting. All right, next slide. All right, and I just put this slide up because last night at 11 o'clock when I was putting it together and I got teary-eyed putting photos in here and just really proud and grateful. You know, the photo on the left is where we started. Then it goes to where we end with product. And that is my middle daughter, Autumn, who was on farm with me this year. And the last two photos are of my baby girl, who was a toddler when we started this journey in 2018 and is now like reading chapter books as we coming to market. So I wanted to share that with you guys because the work that we all do is hard and it's sometimes hard to see the fruits of that. But I just want to encourage everyone to have faith that the seeds you plant today will grow and will support our children and nourish our children in the future. All right, next. All right, to wrap this up, we're not done, y'all. So what started as a dream to just make a hemp tampon that was good for us and the earth, everything that we've had to do to build that has then built this foundation upon which we can grow in ways that we never imagined. So we already have our next few products in late stage product development. We are launching an analyticals company to help other fiber processors around the world evaluate quality and innovate and pipeline that. And we'll be the first one in North America to do that. We are expanding our distribution. We've been asked to white label for European countries, South American countries, and other brands here in the US. And we are making our production vertical. So right now we are raising money for fiber processing for that chemical degumming part. That is the number one pinch point and the number one barrier that it still exists. And somebody asked in the chat, any collaboration with TDA? So one of the things that we are aggressively pursuing is a new program from the TDA where they will cost share up to $1 million of programs that specifically address supply chain issues that became apparent in COVID-19 that benefit farmers. And I was like, oh, well, this is like literally Trace's bio. So right now we are putting together stakeholders that can put money on the table to match that. And so that is my ask for you guys today, is to, number one, sign up for our newsletter. So that way we can invite you to be a beta tester and you'll know what's going on at all times. But also, if you know of anybody who cares about this, who sees our vision for how natural fibers can change the world and help farmers and heal our planet, who might be an investor, please send them my way. And I would love to have a meeting with them and bring them to the table. Of course, in the future, we'll have more products and we'll expand our clinical expertise, and especially all of the R&D that we've done through our FDA learning. We've really set the stage for using hemp in therapeutics and innovating menstrual products in that way to be healing to humans as well. Okay, last. All right, here's our ethos. We believe in healing self, earth, and kin. And all three of those are one and the same. And none of those can happen without the other two. All right, and last. All right, and thank you.